tonight. One man is dead after being struck by an allegedly impaired driver in North York this morning.
A 54-year-old gentleman that was just, I believe, out in the first thing of this morning going to work.
This comes as police begin their early spring traffic safety campaign. Plus,
I wish I had the vocabulary to articulate the crisis that we're in. I don't.
An annual fundraiser aims to boost donations while food banks see record high numbers. And
if compensation hasn't kept pace with the rising costs of running a business, it becomes quite a challenge.
As the number of people across Ontario without a family doctor reaches a record high, the province faces a push to improve their compensation. Good evening. A man was killed this morning while walking along the sidewalk on Lawrence Avenue West. Police say a car lost control and drove up onto the shoulder of the road and believe the driver of the car was impaired. Greg Ross reports.
This is the aftermath of a deadly collision early this morning.
It looks like that the vehicle driver lost control of the vehicle while trying to pass another vehicle and mounted the curb and crossed onto the sidewalk.
Tragically, a man who lived in the area was walking along the sidewalk at the exact same time. That man later died in hospital.
A 54-year-old gentleman that was just, I believe, out in the first thing of this morning going to work.
It's scary.
The crash happened just outside this woman's window.
I heard a bang, but I thought it's just a dump truck or a garbage truck.
Police say the driver of the car was a 19-year-old man, and they believe that he was impaired at the time of the crash. He's been arrested and is now facing multiple charges.
Impaired driving causing death, dangerous driving causing death, and over 80 milligram operation.
Police believe speed was a big factor. They're also investigating whether or not the driver was racing with another car at the time.
So the investigation is ongoing. We're asking members of the public if they have any security camera video or dash cam video that may show the circumstances leading up to this collision.
It happened on the same day that Toronto Police Traffic Services have launched a campaign to promote safety on the roads, especially with kids being out of school for March break.
So you'll see more pedestrians, possibly people at play, folks that are normally indoors during business hours. So we want drivers to be more mindful of the changes to that because we're trying to keep people safe.
Police say the time change can also be a factor, with people still adjusting to losing an hour of sleep because of daylight savings. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Police responded to reports of a suspicious package that was left near City Hall today. The police emergency disposal unit was called just before 9 a.m. to Bay and Albert Street to inspect the box. A boom was heard by those close by. No evacuations were required, but roads were closed temporarily. Police have not said what the package contained, but say nothing of an explosive nature was located. To Richmond Hill now, where an investigation continues into what caused a huge fire that gutted several homes overnight. This is what crews arrived to after getting the call just before midnight. Flames engulfing a home that was under construction on Duncan Road. At one point, 38 firefighters and 8 trucks were on scene. Officials say due to windy conditions and the fact that the house didn't have brick or drywall yet, the fire quickly spread to 2 adjacent homes that were occupied, putting the whole street in danger.
Flames spread really quickly in that home, and the high winds really pushed it to the houses beside. Fortunately, those folks got out early.
Neighbors were able to escape without injuries. York Regional Police say the damage to all 3 homes is estimated to be more than $12 million. The fire marshal is investigating the cause, and police are asking anyone with information to contact them. Thousands of Muslims across the GTA are beginning to mark Ramadan. It's usually recognized as a celebratory time for people to come together and reflect on their faith, but some say this Ramadan feels different as the war in Gaza continues. At this downtown Toronto mosque, hundreds of worshippers walk through the doors daily to pray. And Ramadan is an especially important time to celebrate community.
We're serving iftar on a daily basis. This is around 300 meals or so on a daily basis. We also have our evening prayers and our night prayers as well.
It's good to see this. I've actually been longing for this Ramadan.
But recognizing Ramadan and participating in the 30-day fast is also a reminder of the dire conditions in Gaza as the war continues and aid being delivered to the region remains limited.
Every night we are making prayers for our brothers and sisters in Gaza as well. And things are difficult and they do weigh heavily on the community. Different community members are finding different ways to express themselves.
There's also a sentiment that in addition to charity, Ramadan has taken on another meaning, especially for those who have loved ones in Gaza.
You see a lot of people who are suffering right now in general across the world, right? Ramadan brings everybody together where you are literally praying for the better for everybody.
If you see everything on the news, you'll believe that there's so much chaos.
Worshippers here are not alone in their grief. A team of Muslim therapists in Toronto are hearing similar feelings from their clients.
There's a huge increase in anxiety and in the experience of fatigue expected to show up in the workplace and compartmentalize those parts of ourselves. We're now carrying a lot of grief as we break our fast, knowing our Muslim brothers and sisters in the global community, our siblings around the world, don't have access because of starvation or because of wars.
Meanwhile, the National Council of Canadian Muslims says it's written an open letter supported by several hundred mosques and community members to politicians who want to be a part of Ramadan.
Unless our elected officials at all levels are willing to condemn the mass violence, unless they are willing to endorse all of these points that we've listed in our open joint letter, we will not recommend platforming or allowing any elected official to speak at any of these venues during Ramadan.
Shafni Nalir says the Toronto Islamic Centre welcomes people who want to use the space as a platform for discussions, healing, and workshops. The centre is hosting a large meal that people of all faiths are welcome to attend later in March, a reminder of the importance of coming together.
It's also one of those times where people, they come to the mosque and say, I haven't seen you since last Ramadan almost. Definitely a feeling of more, there's a higher sense of worship, a higher sense of connection, not just with God, but with the community.
The February numbers are out for food banks across the GTA, and they paint a grim picture of the already bleak food insecurity crisis. But as Dale Manuktuk reports, there's hope an annual fundraiser will provide a much-needed boost.
Food Banks Mississauga is marking the start of Ramadan with its annual Give 30 campaign.
Certainly a part of Ramadan is making charitable donations, especially for folks who are struggling to afford food. So it's a perfect match with a time of year where people in our community are gathering together to mark something important.
The campaign launches as the food bank saw the most people access service ever.
Now we're at the stage where it's almost 8% of our entire city is using the food bank. And we're reaching those milestones faster than we anticipated. We're feeding more people than we anticipated. And there doesn't seem to be a light at the end of the tunnel.
I wish I had the vocabulary to articulate the crisis that we're in. I don't.
Neil Hetherington is CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank, which serves Toronto, where they're also breaking records that no one wants to. Last year in February, there were 215,000 client visits. This year, over 300,000.
1 in 10 of our friends and our neighbors and our community members has to make use of a food bank. Food banks used to be on the fringe. They're not on the fringe anymore.
Daily Bread has gone from spending $1.5 million on food pre-COVID-19 pandemic to this year where it could approach $30 million. Meanwhile, the rising cost of living and inflation have impacted donations, especially small gift donors.
So annual giving, individuals who are contributing, let's call it $20 a month, right? So they're phoning us and saying, we got to make it $15 a month.
Hetherington says high-value donations have gone up to even the scales. Helping to tip small-time donations in the right direction, every monetary donation made to Food Banks Mississauga during the Give 30 campaign is being matched by the Habib Canadian Bank.
So instead of $1 equaling 1 meal, it equals 2 meals right now. And we just really encourage folks to find out more information on our website and get involved with Give 30 this year.
Dale Manuktuk, CBC News, Mississauga.
And there's a live look at our city tonight, sitting at around 5 degrees and clear conditions. Victor Paolo joins us now with the first look at the forecast. Victor?
Well, Talia, let me tell you all about it. It's going to be a cool night, as you've noticed right now. Temperatures are still mild, all things considered, but with the mild temperatures, we're going to be starting our day off closer to 0 degrees. But that's going to lead us to a more spring-like conditions on Tuesday. And if you like that sun that's going to be happening, well, you're going to enjoy the sun that's coming on Wednesday because it's going to feel closer to summer-like conditions. Why do I say that? Well, taking a look at what's happening on Tuesday, well, not a lot of cloud cover, as well as no precipitation will be heading in our direction. But taking a look at our 3- and 5-day forecast, the big news story here is 14 degrees on Tuesday, a spring-like day in the GTA, and then taking a look at that 17-degree Wednesday, a low of 3 degrees. Well, it's almost like summertime is just knocking on our door. Now, Thursday, you can expect that precipitation to come, and in the wake of that precipitation, your Friday and Saturday will be seeing some temperatures drop. But before we get there, how about that 14 and 17? Over to you, Talia.
Thanks, Victor. A Kingston landlord is facing 9 provincial offenses after a fatal house fire last year. A CBC investigation found bylaw and fire officials inspected dozens of properties owned by the landlord and his family after last year's fire killed 2 tenants. Dan Takama reports.
Something definitely should have been done before it got to this.
Standing in the empty lot where her sister Bonnie once lived, Melissa DeMille says she's haunted by the fire that killed her and by questions about the house where it happened.
We don't get to see her again. She has 5 nephews and 1 niece that they don't get to see her ever again. It's not fair for somebody's life to be taken.
Bonnie DeMille and her boyfriend Adam Crawley died following a fire at 895 Montreal Street on March 30th last year. Police say the fire wasn't criminal or suspicious. The house belonged to a landlord named Paul Daddiella, who the city says owns 36 other properties along with his family. Reports and internal emails obtained by CBC show city officials said they had a fairly significant history with him around property standards issues. Inspections took place at the family's other properties over the weeks that followed, uncovering fire code violations, some of which echo provincial charges Daddiella faces in connection with the fatal fire. The landlord did not respond to requests for comment.
He's notorious in the city.
Housing advocate Crystal Wilson says many who live at Daddiella properties are vulnerable. She questions why it took a fatal fire for the city to take action.
And my suspicion is that, his housing is filling a need where social housing and supportive housing should be filling that need.
In a statement to CBC, the city said its inspections came after violations were spotted on the night of the fatal fire. It says it will continue to inspect high-risk properties, including those belonging to the Daddiellas. The city describes its approach as proactive, but it comes too late for DeMille's family.
I go through hell every day. I have to keep busy. I just lose it. I just sit and cry.
Bonnie's mother is desperate for something to help remember her daughter and for answers that can bring them some peace.
I just want some closure on what happened so I can put myself at ease and I can put Bonnie to rest.
Dan Takama, CBC News, Kingston.
Welcome back. More than 2 million people in this province do not have a family doctor, and that number is forecast to roughly double in the next few years. Some physicians say a key factor is what family doctors get paid compared with all the costs of running a practice. Our senior Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story.
Hi, Joanne.
Hi, how are you? Dr. Mehele Kumanen practices in Cambridge. She has been a family doctor for 15 years.
There's so much that I love about being a family physician.
Fewer and fewer med school graduates seem to feel the same way, with the number of people choosing to specialize in family medicine dropping every year. Plus, a growing number of family doctors are either retiring early or opting to work in other fields.
Family physicians truly are small business owners. And so I think a lot of family physicians are just looking at the numbers and not feeling that this is a sustainable option for them to continue in practice.
There are now more than 5,000 fully qualified family doctors in Ontario who are not practicing family medicine full-time.
We need to try and encourage these people to get back into a comprehensive care family practice as much as possible.
Let me check those little eyes. So why this reluctance? Many say it's a financial thing, that family doctors' earnings are being eroded by inflation.
We have to pay the bills, and if compensation hasn't kept pace with the rising costs of running a business, it becomes quite a challenge.
Ontario has two systems for paying family doctors. In the model called capitation, the doctor gets a flat fee for each patient on their roster that varies by age and sex. For a male patient in his early 60s, the doctor gets about $250 a year. In the fee-for-service model, OHIP pays the family doctor for each procedure, and for the most commonly billed office visit, the doctor gets $38.
I got a haircut yesterday, and it cost me $40.
Family doctors have to pay their staff and office costs out of their OHIP fees.
You get to the point where you will have to contemplate whether you'll be able to continue on in that field or you'll have to pivot to something else.
Another factor, family doctors say they now have less time to see patients because they're stuck spending more and more time on administrative tasks, medical paperwork that they don't get paid for.
Paperwork is a huge source of burnout. That needs to be fixed because there are a lot of inefficiencies, a lot of duplication, a lot of things that gets dumped on us in terms of administrative work.
The Ontario Medical Association is bargaining with the government now on the contract that covers how nearly all doctors in this province get paid. Compensation for family doctors is firmly in the spotlight.
What we need to do is make sure that physicians' real income keeps pace with inflation, just at a fundamental level.
We asked the Premier, are you willing to pay family doctors more?
I want to thank all the doctors out there. You're all absolute champions, and we'll be able to come up with a great deal.
Some doctors are hoping the Ford government makes a deal like the one reached in British Columbia. That province now pays family physicians for medical admin work, things like doing referrals or reviewing lab results. And in the years since that began, 700 more physicians have opened family practices. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
4 years ago today, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. The infection has since killed more than 58,000 Canadians. While the peak of the pandemic has passed, hundreds are still dying every month here. Experts say vaccine boosters remain a crucial protection, especially among the older population. Lauren Pelly reports.
COVID-19 can be characterized as a pandemic.
4 years after that declaration from the World Health Organization, COVID is still on many Canadians' minds.
It doesn't feel like it was 4 years ago, but I mean, I'm happy that we are where we are.
I think that was a very powerful impact on people's life.
I just don't want to get sick. I got races to run, so just can't get sick.
Researchers say staying up to date on COVID vaccines remains one of the best ways to protect yourself. And a new American study suggests more frequent vaccination for high-risk populations like older adults and anyone immunocompromised could help reduce the burden of severe illness.
It becomes less about the number of doses you've gotten and more about the time since your last vaccine dose or infection.
The study's co-author says protection wanes over time, leaving higher-risk groups more vulnerable.
If you just look at the data on severe disease and who's being hospitalized and dying right now, it's almost the same pattern that's been present the entire pandemic. And I think that's quite striking.
Canada's overall COVID death rates have dropped dramatically since 2020, but older age groups are still bearing the brunt, with 9 in 10 total deaths among those aged 60 and up.
I think we'll see new guidance.
This Canadian immunologist expects a spring vaccine push here for higher risk groups, since COVID is still circulating year-round, at least for now.
I suspect we'll get to a place where it's more seasonal than it has been.
Scientists do remain hopeful that COVID will become less of a threat over time, but for now, it's still sending some Canadians to hospital and leaving others with lasting health impacts. Official guidance from Canada's national vaccine advisors, high-risk Canadians can get another spring dose. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, it's that time of the year again. Kids are out of school for March break, but with inflation driving up costs, some families are cutting back on holiday plans.
Usually we would go away, but this year just hanging around town.
It's definitely a challenge, like keeping things to budget because things have gotten more expensive.
Just touring around the city, you know, here and there, trying to save a little bit of money because of it's been a little bit expensive the last few months last year, so we're trying to cut costs.
I've got a friend that didn't even take time off for the March break because he'd rather be working.
If you are planning on staying in the city this week, there are plenty of things to do. Camp TO offers indoor and outdoor activities for kids aged 4 to 16. Community centers will offer many free and low-cost activities such as swimming, art classes, and yoga. And despite the warm weather, ice rinks are open across the city. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Time now for a final check on the forecast with Victor Paulo. Victor, how's it looking?
Well, Talia, let me tell you about that mild temperature we're going to be receiving when it comes to later on to the overnight tonight, as well as into tomorrow morning. It's going to be around 0 degrees by the time we start our day, and that's going to end up progressing all the way up to about 14 degrees by the time we're halfway through your Tuesday. That's going to be the high, which we have expected. And then the rest of the forecast when it comes to your Wednesday, well, we're expecting it to be almost closer to summer-like conditions. Now, taking a bird's eye view is exactly what's happening over here. Well, we can see that over the GTA, there's not going to be a lot of cloud cover, which will be over our area for about the next 48 hours. We're expecting that cloud cover to build up as we get closer to your Wednesday night into Thursday morning. Now, why do I say that? It's because we're expecting a bit of rain to come in on your Thursday and your Friday as well. And in the wake of that rain, we're expecting the temperatures to go all the way from almost 20 degrees on Wednesday down to single digits for a high on Saturday. But here's what's happening when it comes to the wind gust in the region. Well, we can see a lot of that wind is coming in from the south, and those south winds are a big factor as to why things are going to be quite warm by the time we get into our day on Tuesday. Up to 14 degrees, we're expecting that high, and those south winds are going to last all the way through to about Wednesday. And that's where we're going to see a bit of a change in the wind, and that change in wind direction is going to be bringing some precipitation as well as cooling down the air, as it's not going to be as warm as it would be on Wednesday. Now, here's what's happening from a bird's eye view as we're taking a look at what precipitation or what snow might come over the next 48 hours, 72 hours. Well, as you can see here, the good news is there's nothing that's going to be falling on your Tuesday as well as your Wednesday as well. Now, a quick look at our long-range forecast. We talked about how the temperatures will be dropping, and you can see that as you get closer towards your Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But that high of 14 on Tuesday, high of 17 on Wednesday is definitely going to be welcome, as it's going to be a nice way to spend your March break. But make sure you stay dry when it comes to Thursday, Friday, and it's going to be a gloomy Saturday. Hope you all have yourselves a great night, and over to you, Talia.
Thanks, Victor. And that's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. Good night.